So I welcome Dean.
Thank you. Thank you for the platform and the invitation.
No problem.
So I will tell you a little bit about my journey and the work that we're doing. And then I'd love to have a conversation, because I think it's a consultancy between us to identify what our real challenges are, what our major concerns are. And problems have scales, don't they? Violence, serious youth violence is a 10. I'm quite irritated by microaggressions, might be a 3. So we put them into context and where we need to solve them and how we need to solve them. And it's all about the understanding, because unlike the Matrix, there is no one, there is no Neo. We need the amalgamation of our collective experiences for a mapping exercise to understand exactly what all of our challenges are holistically and across the nation, so that we feed back our challenges to our policy directors, not looking for Europeans, our distant cousins, to solve our problems, but we create our policy. And then that's where our relationship with local authority starts, because we want to, just like every true commercial problem that is solved has a commercial service and a fee attached. Now, we don't do that. Everybody else does it and understands it. Refuse collection solves a very real, tangible societal problem. We produce refuse, someone's got to get rid of it. Well, as it stands right now, every single local authority outsources refuse collection. We want to solve African Caribbean problems because we are culturally competent and local authorities aren't, for the best will in the world. And unfortunately, whether it is us going into a machine, and as they say, there's no such thing as a river without banks, we're not changing anything, because party policy, legislation can be changed like that to contain us. So for all of our ideologies, sometimes you've got to say that I'm licked. But where you may use trains and underground systems, not all of them have barriers. So we look for the anomalies to enter a system. And then once we understand the anomalies to enter a system, we build our systems on top of those systems so that we can live in a parallel universe, not unlike our Yiddish brothers and sisters live in their own parallel universe. And some adept Muslim communities and Sikh communities live in their parallel universe. But this goes by us. Now, they solve their own problems with public resources, which incidentally they contribute to, but so do we. So we just want our share of those resources that we contribute to solve our own problems based on superior policy that has formed initiatives that we need you to pay for, because someone's always got to pay. So that's been our challenge. I had my retail, which was the last of probably 8 businesses for 11 years, over the course of 27 years. And when I closed that, I wanted to go fully into the civic and entrepreneurial space. And I said, I want to apply my entrepreneurial acumen to civic work, because I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. We know this because there's refuse collection, which is outsourced for hundreds of millions a year, right? So it was whittling down the model by tens of thousands of hours of conversation, which didn't start last year, actually started about 5 years ago. I would meet connections on LinkedIn, take them for a drink or to dinner and pick their brains. This was in the think tank stage of the solution room. Now, over the course of that time, I built up such an inordinate amount of connections. It needed to be more than a think tank. It needed to be an institution, because I personally wasn't capable of dealing with the fallout of 1,000+ names of individuals. It's too much for an individual. It has to be in systems that are record keeping, can break people down into their areas of expertise, And now we start to work with something as a very solid foundation where we can say, well, this is an institution now that we're forming. And we're very specific. The basis of this is to solve African Caribbean problems, not to make money. So money is a byproduct of what you do successfully, and we get it twisted. See, if you come out the gate to make money, the first thing I would have said, look, nobody cares about us. We got to do the main thing, and I've got to get everybody involved. No. Nobody's giving us grants because they know what we've come to do, because I've been a little too vocal as a founder, and we've got to take money to promote the vaccine agenda. No. So if we've got to go for a stretch without money, we've got to go for a stretch without money. So that was 14 months with no income. Designing, evolving, making more contacts, making more inroads to those with budgets who are allies on the inside, and just gently steering, evolving the model until it became a very solid business model of civic solution partnerships, where we have policymakers on our side who design policy that creates initiatives to solve our problems that we then offer to local authority to pay for the African Caribbean constituents in their local ward. And then it's a modular and scalable delivery where we get proof of concept, and then we just grow it out. So we target 8 boroughs within London, but whilst we're doing that, organizations like Pursuit of Happiness know I will share any of our structure and all of our stuff in one email. Constitution, manifesto, structure of the schools to industry pipeline, the whole thing. Share it very widely, because we want to set up these cells, the Hydra, across the entire country, so that when it comes down to it, we actually have a truly representative national representation. So we are just an umbrella that facilitate our advocacy, lobbying on our behalf, also acting as a pack where when we start to release short form media content next year, we are telling people how to vote in particular wards. Because in this ward, this is our ally. In this ward here, you vote in Conservative, but in that ward there, you vote in Labour. Because we have agreements that they're going to do what we want. Not after we vote, before we vote. Quid pro quo for our valuable votes based on our collective influence on an election. Not individuals, it doesn't matter. Our collective influence on an election. So when we think like that, it's not that we can't do it, it's that we've not done it. Because we all say it and pay lip service to it. It's a bit like needing a latrine if you have nowhere to defecate. If nobody's going to dig it, yes, we're all aware that we require it because there has to be sanitation that is separate in this dirt space where we're walking and sleeping. But somebody's got to push the shovel in the ground and dig a latrine and fill it with water so that it's fit for purpose. So all AdPack is a vehicle that is doing the digging, asking us to come on board and dig to the same purpose, because the whole point is to identify our common denominators, because we're so separated by tribes. Jamaican, Trinidadian, Nigerian. So let's just take direct tribes out of the equation first of all, which is why I say that the culture can even be more important than the ethnicity. But when you looked at the European Union, which we saw as a functional union, it wasn't a cultural union. It was an economic union to establish an economic bloc. So what our agenda is to establish the almost 3 million population as an economic and an easily identifiable economic bloc in the UK. So when we present, no us in the room, don't talk about us in the room. That there you're carving up for Sikhs and everybody else. And because we now come into lobby to affect the terms of reference, forget politically black, where anybody can self-elect, like Rachel Dolezal. Now, black must mean African Caribbean, or it can't go down, which is the point of collectively bringing people behind one hydra. It represents you, you represent you through it. So now when we're having these conversations, you don't define what is for us anymore, because now we are established enough where we tell you, and then we tell you what our requirements are, because your own constituents are invited via a public consultation, whilst we are going to the officers and councillors and saying these are the services that we provide. So then they inadvertently are becoming stakeholders to request the policies and initiatives that solve their problems. And we've never done it this way around. It's always been reacting to funding. Oh, there's £4 that's available. You apply and we'll see. There's 20 grand that's available. You apply. Yeah, we don't like that. Could you change that? Could you involve these people? No. We are a substantial enough population in your ward. So this is specifically for us, by us, based on the resources that we contribute through taxation to your ward. I've finished the manifesto. So in any way along the line, I invite questions as open as you like, any and all questions, any problems that we have, because I haven't thought of everything. Nobody in the team has thought of everything. And we just want that feedback, because this is a reciprocal learning that we're creating right now.
Okay, thank you, Dean. That was great. That was so informative. And we've got Corinne with her hand up. Corinne, do you want to come in, unmute yourself and come in, sis?
Hi, Dee.
Hi, Corinne.
Okay, yeah, really interesting. Okay, so I really, I'm really interested in this, and I like the bit where, you know, it's not necessarily finance and money driven, you know, kind of at the start, and wanting to get our voice heard in several ways. Do you use algorithms?
No, this is the thing.
No.
We are the algorithm. You see, how this journey started for me, I was in 140 WhatsApp groups, possibly as many Facebook groups, having an inhuman amount of engagement on a daily basis, which my missus would say ate up all of my capacity to think or to communicate, because you come home and mute. However, then I start to have conversations, and when I talk about the spiritual component, we then set our antenna to receive, and we start to attract those of a similar ilk and have similar conversations. And collectively, we start mapping the terrain and the environment. Now, let's say that European society talks of religion, but underestimates our spiritual component, that component of our ancestors, that component that creates resonance, that component that calls us. Well, we don't extrapolate that. So we're not going to talk specifically about mental illness or physical illness, because they're connected. Because you can have this problem in your mind that makes you physically sick. We're holistic beings, aren't we? And that is how we look at all of our problems and challenges, in that there's an ecosystem of oppression, because racism is a team sport. So therefore, there must be an ecosystem of solutions. And now we open for consultation to frequently and constantly feed what our specific challenges are at this time, which also evolves, which will be very different next year when central banking digital currencies replace cash, and those who have an illegitimate income can't make cash illegitimate income. And how do they evolve, rather than just kicking in people's doors and having threatening conversations to convince you to give up what you would rather keep your physical safety for. So we are jumping ahead of all these challenges before they arrive. So this is where we are. Now we're aware via all of that 5 years of material what our current problems are. Our job is to look ahead. Our job is to create our own economic ecosystem of wallet, coin, preferred providers for us to protect us, because when the central banking digital currencies come, they have the ability to stop you from purchasing what you'd like, where you'd like, cross-border payments, and it's about control.
Can I also ask, okay, so and for us that live in the provinces, so how does that pan out?
So we create local chapters with organizations already doing the work, already having the network, because that's how we present a national organization locally. Everything in the ecosystem is based on local consultation and local delivery. That then collectively we have the governmental conversation. So when I said we have to have a parallel universe, our universe has to sit side by side with local authority. Yeah. But come the monthly strategic meeting, we must be as holistic a part of that monthly strategic meeting as the education board, as the local health authority, as the police, as the fire brigade, as the councillors, social services. Well, this has a substantial African Caribbean population. Well, we got to be in that mix as well. And that's where the chair will attend from the local chapter and be right in there with as much authority, because they represent this many of your constituents.
Is it our own G7?
Exactly.
Yeah. I was thinking, has anyone else got any questions? Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry.
I'll just say this because it might throw you back. All because you said something very important. Is it OMG7? All power is self-appointed. So who is going to appoint us this power that we desire other than us? So when you make a decision, you make a big decision that's based on clarity of our history of being in the UK for 70 years, relying on those who have no intention of evolving our socio-economic position. And then we say, no, we're going to do that. And we're a national body and we're not asking you. We're doing it and we're building it. And we don't need anybody's permission to do that. And we're also fully aware of trusts and sovereign law, where we will incorporate all of our new institutions in trust using common law, so that we can operate outside of your legislation, but easily engage with you through our CICs for the financial component, so that we can live in a parallel universe. And that circumvent racism.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what's interesting. I'm in Sheffield, and the people of Sheffield have voted for the council to be run in a different way. So we've said that we're fed up of their private little, when they have the council meetings, those committees, gone. And the people have got more of a say in what you do, when you do it, how you do it, and who does it.
Very important. Where, when, and how.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And this is it. And it has to be a collective challenge that gets you to that position. Individuals, we're not important. For all of my hyperbole, it doesn't matter if I'm speaking as an individual. Unless there is an ability to align hundreds of thousands of people in terms of voter influence, in terms of economics, what we're doing is talking, and it sounds great on a video, watching it back, because we get that spirit. And then we go out and what do we say? Well, when I go back to the real world, but the world is real that we create. And it's only based on our intention and execution and commitment to creating that reality.
Dean.
Love that. Sorry, Did you put your hand up, Joy? Sorry, if you did, I didn't see. It's all right. Yeah. Okay. So if Joy wants to ask a question, and then iPad Keith, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
I was waiting for Joy's question. I'm not that formal. We're all family.
Dean, you're like a breath of fresh air.
Thank you.
You are like a breath of fresh air. I have sat for months racking my brains as to how to go forward.
Yeah.
And I'm at the stage where I have so much information, having been on LinkedIn for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? So I must be at the stage where you must have been at.
Yeah.
Where you have so many people that you're talking to, but you don't know how to carry that forward, how to amalgamate, to exchange ideas beyond the superficial, hi, my name is, yeah. Question I want to ask, do you give ideas on a regular, do you have meetings or like a training sort of thing, input on a regular basis?
All of the above. So we've got a distance learning platform called Knowledge Finder. So now what we're doing is we're starting to shoot the materials for continual professional development, which is all part of APAC membership. So although Knowledge Finder has a wider base of courses, everything that we produce is free for our members. So continued professional development, training. So we're going to start to make training courses around these things: how to become a school governor, how to become magistrates, custody visitors, all of these civic roles for ordinary people with extraordinary abilities, so that we become bigger stakeholders in our communities. But more than that, in terms of the actual policy, where we want to develop these cells, that specific and bespoke training for chairs, for deputy chairs, and all of those roles within ADPAC, we have the remote learning. What we're starting in London will be the monthly meetings. Now, in the Solution Room, we did this with the Thursday Club, which ran for 6 months in Brixton and then 6 months in Tottenham, because they had huge African Caribbean populations in those boroughs. And we get between 150 and 250 people. But what we're doing now, because we're setting the system, people don't even have to come. One of our broadcast partners has the 6-camera system with the switchers. So we're going to shoot and stream the live events to the member area of the website, and then edit short form clips and just distribute those with salient points around all social media. But the intention is to, again, everything is about the ecosystem of making the modular and scalable elements. So that monthly meeting, we would want duplicated in every single territory. So every London borough, every county around the country where we are, so that you might say this month or for 2 months is the African Caribbean economic reconstruction season. What does that rely on? So you have us who give loans, all the way from personal loans through to venture capital. So you would separate, and we do separate as well, institutional members who are us and individual members. So individual membership is a £5 a month, and then institutional membership is £15. So you might have 5, 10 people coming down from institutional membership, taking the table now, contributing and learning, but they're getting specific industry inside knowledge based on the season that it would be for the meetings. So you might have an individual meeting, and it's all around our personal consumer, building up our credit, utilizing what we have, and our family network in order to do things. And then for industry, it might be the civic sector here for half of it, and the entrepreneurial sector there. And those two aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, because our entrepreneurs should have a civic component, and our civic-minded people should have an entrepreneurial component. So it's all about breaking down these hard barriers that we've learned and unlearning and then relearning what is going to benefit us. And that's what I say is the reciprocal education that we're giving each other via the consultation that we'll do frequently, because then we're learning. Even as you've come, I'm the professor. Are you going to learn?
Yeah. What I'm trying to get my head around is that I'm a trustee for a food bank and a charity in West London. And obviously with COVID and everything that's gone on in the last couple of years, it's been very hard to sort of like get us together where we can move on, because the original idea came from our original group, came from the idea of a women's group that I used to work for as an advisor, based in Harrow. When that was debunked, 5 of us decided to get together and move that group to Hounslow.
It wasn't Harrow Black Sisters, was it?
Oh, I know of Harrow Black Sisters.
Yeah.
No, it's Harrow Women's Group.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we had counselling and various other services within the centre. We wanted to replicate that again, but to do it as a predominantly black group or people of colour. Yeah. Coming together. So that's where we're at.
And I don't say predominantly black group or women of color. So for the purposes of this evening's conversation, I'm just going to say African Caribbean women, and it would be great to. So when we talk about these consultations, let's now talk about the very specific nature of what we're doing when we compartmentalize us as a people. So let's now deal with African Caribbean women and African Caribbean led women's organizations. So let's say you took a sister space for DV, and you were now talking about food banks as well. And these women are in the same room. And the first thing we want to do is we want to start sharing ideas very freely, in a safe space, led by peers, which is obviously African Caribbean women, to identify problems, how to overcome them, because there's common experience, but there's also vast experience in the room one, but similarly diverse experience, because we're not a homogenous group. These are the platforms that bring up that really expansive set of conversations that lead to big thinking solutions. So again, you may not hear this from men. Well, why do women have? Well, women need their spaces, and men also need their spaces. As young people, to create peer leadership also require their spaces. We're not homogenous. We must create the environments practically that benefit the growth of every component of our community. So I've put my email there. Please feel free to take it. It's in the chat. And then I think about a brother of mine in Labrador Grove, and his name evades me at the moment. I was shooting a documentary today and I have too many things in my head, but he is very tapped into Grove, and those tentacles go out in West London. So there are particular places where it's great to create proofs of concept, again, for local authority, because our desire is for them to outsource these things to us to gain the resources. Our job is to more fairly distribute the resources to our people within the borough. So when I talk about delivery partners, that's it, your key delivery partner. And if you think about companies in the States like Halliburton, now they're capitalists, big contractors. You say, well, as an umbrella, we want to become a big contractor to go in and get the big contracts to solve our people's problems in local authority. But we don't outsource, we insource all our member delivery partners to fulfill those contracts.
Right.
Very different, because nature runs successfully based on ecosystems. And anything we do as African people must be based on very strong ecosystems that are very natural and very local.
Right.
because then the people don't have any apprehension about engaging. They know the agenda of local people delivering local services with a national framework. And it's just that we haven't been that organized, which is why we've always been outmaneuvered, because we have such a unique lack of trust based on being the descendants of enslaved people, which all of those neuroses that we have gained naturally are still utilized against us. So in the background of all this, when we speak about distance learning training, is also our reparations, which is our psychological and spiritual reparations, which is very different from the economic reparations. So this is the component that we deliver to ourselves from the inception of education at 3 within the schools to industry pipeline, all the way through 21, but also to us who are more damaged down the line, to first recognize, and for a series of, there's no masterclass, because that's not how we adopt, and that's not how we evolve things into the practice of our life. Slow exposure, lots of short form videos speaking about different elements of the same thing towards the same purpose, but also from different perspectives, because we're not a homogenous group. So those little 2-minute, 20-second videos every day, bang, 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 bang. And then the little 10-minute documentaries like Vice. And also then you've got 45-minute training, hour and a half training. And then all of those things culminate into us leading up to the days where we might say, this is a 3-hour seminar, or even a whole weekend, 2-day seminar. So there are scales to the rollout of delivery. And for us, it has to be very gentle, which is why it has to be slow exposure, because it's not to, no judgment, number one. You don't know this and you should know. Look, we've been doing that for decades. Forget that. I'm up here and you're down and you don't. Look, none of us know. Because I don't know any man I can go to who can write £1 million check. You see, brethren, when you can write £1 million check, you know, not intellectually, you know. And we're not there. And none of us are there.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Thank you.
No, that's great.
No, thank you. Please take my email as well.
Yeah, I'm going to. I'm going
put
to.
it together.
There are other projects that I'm involved with on the context. Next year, I get involved with another project which is to do with mentoring.
Yeah.
And it's going to be based in Tottenham and around that area.
And we have delivery partners.
Yeah, delivery partners.
So it's just about introducing us to each other.
Okay.
So that we can circumvent the learning curves.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. So I'm just gonna pop on here. And are you online on a regular basis, i.e. these little mini? I did myself, but our historic problem with charismatic leadership, I saw it as a point where it's not advantageous anymore. Because one, we get confused admiration. Sometimes you just see a man fears too much. And the amount that I've said, there's a lot of materials that are already online. But what I prefer now is when I meet people who are at the echelon where you are in what you do, I just prefer to have the direct conversation and let's build, introduce you to as many of my network, and we're trading people in our network and just then growing out the proposition. Because I also find that because we don't necessarily own the physical spaces, we betray ourselves in giving a lot of public information that we don't need to do so much. Now, I'm a slow, don't think I'm smart. I'm not. I'm a slow learner. I'm just retracting this back now within the last 3 months. But I've put out far too much information that should possibly not have been there. I would have been able to get a lot more in the way of grants and money, but the agenda is known. So there were things that we have a contract now to deliver safe space peer leadership training for young men who are exposed to serious youth violence. Right. So if you work with people like Paul Lawrence, God rest his soul.
God rest his soul. Paul was my brother, and we had a conversation the week before.
Yeah, I was talking to him a week before.
Yeah. God bless.
Sadly missed.
Yeah, absolutely. So 100 Black Men, Manhood Academy, WYLA, Origin HQ, all of them.
Yeah,
because the first tenet within education, in the education of our children, is just like how Yiddish brothers and sisters, is that rites of passage should be a must. One parent family, two parent family. It should be universal, because what it does is it sets in a, number one, a strong set of cultural values. Two, it exposes young men and women to our community in all its forms, people working at the highest echelons of every industry, and it teaches them a common value system. Now, because we don't have a common value system, it's easy to shake up the jar and we fight each other. But when we understand, because the 2-day conference in Darba that encompasses all rites of passage organizations sets the framework which everybody goes away and adopts irrespective of their brand. Well, now we have a universal template for how we're working, and we're creating those common platforms, because we're so good at identifying our differences. But if I said in a room of 100 people, what are our commonalities? Give me 5 commonalities that we have. Because what we do from this side of the table is set to align us behind our commonalities. So now you have the APPG, which is around reparations. I say the number 1 point on our manifesto is we are entitled to reparations, and 100% of African Caribbean and mixed heritage African origin people in this country should be behind supporting the cause for reparations, bar none. And anybody where we see on the other side of that line, we're coming for you. Not me. That's what we use our collective short form videos for. So we will get 100 people bawling your name, day, date, and hour, so that you feel held accountable.
I get you. Still a breath of fresh air.
Thanks, Dean. Thanks, Joy. Okay, we've got iPad Keith next, and then I'm going to read a question that Carl's put in the chat, and then I'll bring Liz in. Okay, take that. You can. Oh, you've taken the mute off. No problem.
Hi, Dean. Hi.
How you doing, Keith?
I'm good. Well, we spoke before, so I'll just introduce myself. My name is Keith Ray. I'm the treasurer of a charity collection collective based in Sheffield. To be honest, Dean, you probably answered my question. It's been quite a while since I put my hand up.
I'd love for you to ask it in any case, brother.
Sorry?
I'd love for you to ask it in any case.
Well, what I was originally going to ask, and it's basically because, I mean, even Karina hinted at, Sheffield's quite a unique sort of setup when it comes to sort of local politics. And I think what needs to happen in Sheffield is that we need to be more sort of aware about the fact that we're underrepresented in Sheffield in terms of, you know, being councillors, so-called local officials or whatever. So the sort of voice that we've got in Sheffield is seriously muted. It doesn't really, we don't really have that political sort of influence. And there's obviously quite a lot of organisations in Sheffield that represent us, so to speak, but collectively there isn't anybody, a particular individual you can sort of put your hand up and say, oh, well, yes, so-and-so is on sits on the Sheffield local city council and has our ear, so to speak. That being said, I mean, obviously you've hinted that, I mentioned that you've got a distance learning sort of pack, which is so how to be this or how to be that sort of thing, which is quite good, because what we seem to sort of forget is that everything operates on systems, because I'm a systems person. I mean, my background, and what we need to understand is that the reason why Boris Johnson can tell half truths or no truths at all and get away with it, because there's a system that's there to back him up,
to protect him.
Protect him basically. And that's why other communities have a system in place. I mean, and you mentioned about commonalities that we need to come together. I mean, I've already said that. I mean, we need to sort of dispense with our sort of petty differences and just basically get on with the job of actually coming together on some sort of common ground in order to progress. So, yeah, I mean, you basically gone down the road where I've obviously thought about from quite a long time ago. And you've obviously progressed quite a long way in terms of what you want to do and how you want to do things.
However, we had that opportunity.
Yeah, so it's just basically it, really. I mean, like you said, as a conversation, you basically cross the T's and dotted the I's where as far as I'm concerned. So.
Let's take this conversation offline as well. So take my email that is in the chat. But what I will say is this as well. In the place where the barrel has proved ineffective, and it's for a specific reason. Look, let's take these characters like Kemi Badenoch, Tony Sewell, Trevor Phillips. They have become turncoats, but they didn't necessarily start out that way. Remember, we're not a community that socially or financially reward our champions. And unfortunately, when people have gone around the mill enough, they're going to go where the money is. Now, in the 14 months that I was doing the groundwork to formally establish ADPAC, I didn't take any funding. And the minute I put a message on LinkedIn to say that we're now happy to start conversations with corporate CSR programs, local authorities, and the public sector, the first thing I did was get an email. There's 10 grand. Do you want to become a community champion for COVID? No. Let me just hold on to being Brook for a minute, because we're highly intentional about what we want to do. Now, if the barrel has become polluted, we go to the tree. So we've created a civic and entrepreneurial leadership program called Manage, which is ongoing, which is really to take cohorts of 10 men, 10 young women, let's say 16 to 25, teaching them sophisticated problem solving skills, media training, communication skills in a formal environment, negotiation skills, all of these key skills that civic and entrepreneurial leaders need. And it must be in tandem, because when we make it, we're all going to give back to the community, right? Only along the line, we get bigger problems and we've got children. Now you've got a job and a house. It doesn't happen, does it? So from the inception, if we have a civic and entrepreneurial training for cohorts of 10 who, as they come in the gate, have different skill sets, well, now we teach you how to work in sweat equity as an alumni when you leave. So number one, we want you to become a lifelong alumni. Two, we want you to recognize your respective skills. So you're a good waffler and you're quite convincing. So you're great at sales. You're great at marketing. You're great at analytics. You're great with finances. So now you've actually got a corporate board within the cohorts of 10 that we've taught to work in sweat equity. But as you go out into the world, you might go and work in local authority. You might go and work in a bank. And now as a society, your cell of the Hydra, your core of 10, working together. Number one, you can set up any entity you like collectively. There's no skills deficits. And any there are, now you are skilled in recruiting as well, and then being able to nurture them between your cell. So when you think about that, number one, part of APAC that I'm not going to go so much into is about creating societies for us, people of a common value, of a common purpose, which is covert, no problem. Similarly, those cabals of, and let's break down the different leadership. So I would call myself a visionary leader because I look where there may be a deficit and create a solution because it's needed, it isn't there. But I'm not an operational leader. I don't particularly have any interest in coming in and running that system. I want to hand that over to an operational leader who will then take it and make it function optimally. So we also break down and distinguish all the different types of leadership. So we can say, you are there, so that we're very clear and intentional about what we're doing. And it's not everybody is that guy who's got to be here. Because sometimes your role is to convince, sometimes your role is to create, sometimes your role is to maintain. Beyonce wasn't Michelle, wasn't Kelly and Destiny's Child. You're all different. But when you get together, it was magical. But we must all know our steps and we must all know our role. So yeah, let's have that conversation.
Okay. There's one thing that you've mentioned, and that was on reparations. And
yeah.
My thoughts on reparations are essentially that we wouldn't realistically get.
You did that to yourself. And I'm not stopping you because I'm not capable of stopping you from talking, but I want you to recognize what you do.
Yeah, okay.
We wouldn't realistically, but please, my brother, continue.
Yeah. I see what you mean. Well, okay, I'll rephrase that. What I can see about reparations is that people's hopes may be dashed if they expect to get. This is my personal thought. Expect to get a massive check for reparations, because reparations can come in all different shapes and sizes in terms of
absolutely
what propriety justice is all about.
Reparatory justice. Yeah.
So I think that needs to be made clear to everybody who gets engaged in that particular type of argument.
You just solved your own problem right there. You designed a problem of your own mental creation. And I'll say this, like in spirituality, everything is mind.
Yeah.
Everything is mind. So you created the problem, but then you solved it. We need to be clear. Cool. So the point of a reparations council, other than these broad and ambiguous terms that we use, look at that. What we're doing now is we're creating the clarity of what it actually looks like. And yes, it looks like all of the above. It looks like individual reparations. It looks like institutional reparations. It looks like the specific territory reparations, which we want to enable our island brothers and sisters to realize because of our relationship with them and us being outsourced labor for the exploitation of our free labor and intellectual capital. Yes. So it looks like all of the above. And we attack all the time, not separate, thinking as a hive, an African hive mind. Because bees act as a hive. Any ecosystem must be connected. I can't look at ADOS or Foundational Black Americans and say that makes sense, because there's a bigger reparations argument. Now, because you are speaking in a xenophobic way about your African brothers and sisters, you could have just been technical and said, you know, this is a very specific reparations movement we're talking about for the descendants of American slavery. And there are many reparations movements, and we're going to share tactics, intelligence, and all of the above. But agents through ego can inadvertently become agents, which is about just being the noisy guy at the front. Doesn't make you qualified. Okay. Because we are inextricably linked to various land masses on the continent from which we were kidnapped and are the descendants of a particular experience. But it's not to differentiate and say you go over there and you're trying speak technically. And this is where I say my entrepreneurial acumen. I hear people talk about business and they'll say things, I say, but that's not accurate, because that's not how it works. Like, now break down your taxation, which is your corporate tax, VAT, this and that. Just be specific to everything and you create clarity. You get rid of all opposition, because now your argument is a nonsense. It's just hyperbole. We've created all. We want a sovereign territory in an African nation, which between all of us as family, we have a sovereign territory in an African nation. The key is to build the repertory courts and repertory banks, diaspora banks, to receive funds, because those are development banks now that work collectively on our behalf. So think about our own continent that we could go back to. We're of no value, right? Because we're of no economic value. Now, 54 men will get on a plane and go to China because the potential of capital is dangled in front of their face. Realized or not, is dangled. 54 men will get on a plane and go to Russia because the perception of capital and arms is dangled in front of their face. Now, what if you could stay home and the diaspora just come to you and the diaspora bank is right there for development projects, to create intra-African trade on continent in the diaspora, source materials, preferred delivery partners internationally? Well, now we're having a very different conversation. You see, when you were talking to a hungry man, you didn't have his ears and you said, you want to sit down and have a coffee or a sandwich? Okay, now we're talking.
Okay.
Yeah, please, let's continue this offline.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a question as well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Kate, for your question, and thanks, Dean. Now, Mark, you can go because then I'm going to read Carl's question in the chat.
Good stuff. So yeah, thanks for everything you've said so far, Dean. And it was about, I think you've partly answered the question as well, because most of the meetings we go to, we can see the divide between Africans and Caribbeans, and the last names are usually a good indicator, but they've got the same problems, but they approach it differently. So they've sort of got the hive mentality. How do we join with them and make that collective impact much greater?
This is why I said at the beginning of the conversation, culture can be more important than ethnicity. So now when we look at cultural models, you might now look at the Nigerian community who are collectively bound around Christianity. They're more strongly bound around tribalism. Hey, we're not adopting Christianity, but now we got to look at the structure of what binds them. So you say there's a common space where they can go and get information that benefits them. But why do you dress up when you go to church? You're doing business. So now let's look at what is actually going on. You go and you meet these guys. It's a social environment. It's somewhere where you have preferred delivery partners for business. I know this brother from my church. I can recommend him. Okay, we understand. So ours is to learn from models that work, plagiarize them, deliver them locally, that go across the board and work for us. The difference is they're non-denominational, and the key to everything is that we are dealing with economic union as opposed to cultural union, as opposed to any small divisive factor that we're going to be able to break away from, that our traditional adversaries will also at some stage use against us. Because if you raise a gun, they will fire back. And we are not prepared for the real comeback that will happen. But if you raise a gun, they will fire back. And we need to be prepared in all eventualities, which is why a hive mind from the beginning has to be developed based on systems which are functional.
I agree. And that's when we invited you, as Una pointed out, it was that definition of racism that you really articulated in the best way I've heard it described so far. And it's about using those tactics that are there because they're already existing. We're just not utilizing them. It's not that they don't exist. It's just that the community that we come from doesn't take up those arms. It doesn't take up those opportunities and run with them. And it's trying to get motivation. So even politically, educationally wise, we've seen that there's not enough black voices in our local community, even though it is a black community that is politically active. So how do you spark that you know, that conversation to get people interested in something which to most people is a dead stock thing that don't make any change really?
It's not always going to the tree. I mean, it's not always going to the barrel, because if the barrel is polluted, you've got to go to the tree. So another set of systems that we set up is the ACS forums. Now, this is to go into universities nationally to create forums. So let's say we went to a business university, and now this is an economic forum. You're the chair, you're the secretary, you're the this, and now you're having conversations about the African Caribbean economic reconstruction. There's value in that, and you're a forum and you meet regularly, but then you interact with policy directors over here. So you're talking about building something that you can contribute to that's going to benefit your generation in 10 years' time. Now, from this side, we create the shadow work, and we're introducing those young people who aspire to go into particular positions and positioning those with the experience that is there. So human beings are keys, aren't we? And as keys, we open different doors for each other. So you're introducing somebody with no experience, but has got fresh ideas and a new spin on thinking into human beings that can open doors for them. But similarly, there's an exchange of information and learning, which is very important. And one of the things as we record how we're learning, even today we're recording how we're learning, we're working out loud, right? So others can learn from that. And that is what the distance learning platforms are all about. It's about being able to observe that which was going on behind the scenes when the real progress was being made. Because when you fall off, all you do is you divert back to what was when it was working. And it's clear because you've got time frames.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Yeah. Okay. I think Corinne.
Okay.
Right?
No, we've got a question from Carl in the chat. And he put it in an hour, 40 minutes ago. What are those political and economical factors and influence needed to drive this concept and ideology to drive this infrastructure to meet well-being of Black people?
So in the first instance, it's about engagement. Monthly meetings with local pockets of community. So let's say as we start, we're about to start the meetings at Conway Hall, because it's a central London base where they can get to from a local tube station, and it's a 2-minute walk around the corner. But what we do is we shoot that with 6 cameras and we stream it live, so that even those who aren't there can get it vicariously and experience it. Now, when we talk about the consultation, first we present a framework, an initiative, or we could be talking about a particular solution, and then we invite the questions, and this is where we start to understand what the problems are. But what we're doing is we're making the people stakeholders in what we're doing, because you see us because we're there. Now, when you're stakeholders, it's very easy now for you to attach to this is where I talk about slow exposure, the short form media messaging that we're putting out on numerous platforms on a daily basis with different delivery partners, and you become full stakeholders in what we're doing. So when we go to local authority, and I think it was Corinne that spoke about how Sheffield is working with the local authority being changed by the people. Well, now when the people make demands and we're saying we want you to license our civic solution partnerships, well, you see, they're the beneficiaries. Here's the costings. Here are the initiatives. We want you to pay for that. Because the other way around is that we as an institution are reacting to funding. And we're the last to know when these things are done pretty much in the dark, who's going to get the money, which is okay. But then we have to learn from that, don't we? And we have to evolve. So let's understand what the problems are by consulting with the population, forming the policy that creates initiatives, packaging them up, full costings, going to local authority and saying, this is what it is. But you also know that it's very much desired over there, because those people are stakeholders in what we're packaging up to provide in terms of solutions. and my battery's on 3%, so I'm going to need to plug this in or I'm going to disappear.
What? How do you want to
how do people think about what you've just said, Dean? Is so
could
good.
I'm
Sorry, Carl.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please, Carl.
Yeah, can I comment on that, Dean?
Yes, sir.
Listening to your presentation, which actually have impact on the sort of a philosophy in which you're talking about, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, in terms of the Pan-African philosophy where Patrick Lalumba is talking about, come under similar headings in terms of uniting Africa, right? Now, what I see is that the fact is the infrastructure actually presents itself as a corporation. Right?
Absolutely.
You're building a corporation in a way in which involve the sort of a human pyramids, right? And getting that type of correlation to take place. Now, we have to look at something else in terms of decolonization, right, of the human mind, right? And
also, I'm listening to you, but I'm just turning off my camera because I'm going to grab a charger. Right. I don't want to disappear while you're right in the middle of, because I'm taking from you.
Yeah. So you hear me still? Do you hear me still?
Yeah, I'm listening to you. I'm literally just grabbing the charger.
So, in turns, is that the fact is we have within our community dual heritage, right? And the percentage of population growth in that category is increasing rapidly, right? To include them in that type of mindset and change in the dynamics, right? What are the elements that you have picked up in terms of the things that the Black people is not receiving from the local authority or even from central government, right? For us to make that big difference in that infrastructure to be able to sustain and I would say create that type of self-sufficient, right? To deal with the things that we're not getting from the local authority or even from central government. Now, I know that the fact is that there are always funding, right, that is applied from local authority, the central government, right, for Black people development. But we doesn't see that money.
Absolutely, I concur. We're on the same page.
And the reason we doesn't see that money is because it has been claimed that we are not structurally, right, put together to be able to handle big money, as they say. In terms of getting us under an umbrella of administration, is actually what you're saying there is the key for further development and further control, right?
Absolutely.
For us to really move forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when you think of it, there's an electronic spine that must run underneath the organization because this is where communications are. So we do this by partnering with organizations. We just partner with an organization called Full Spectrum. Full Spectrum is a virtual school. They had a 50 grand worth of funding that they were successful in completing. And then they just got a substantial match funding the other day. Now, virtual schools are where all schools are going to go. So we're talking about this at the inception where we as a people have a company, we've tapped right into them, and to underwrite the schools to industry initiative in the public health approach, we would be putting that software forward to local authority for all schools to adopt, including ours. Now, it's a commercial business, it's licensable, but services are commercial that public institutions use. Now, what it has is an AI that deals with the vulnerability of children in terms of things like county lines that goes into their softwares, their social media. It's the only available virtual schools software platform on the market that plugs into all existing local authority systems, including social services, the NHS and everybody else, which is why it's perfectly in line with our culturally competent public health approach. So, I mean, that can be used for mainstreaming with everybody, but we have this within our collective. So our thing, first of all, is always a public health approach, that we, first and foremost, are the delivery partners of solving problems for our people with intra-agency approach. So you mentioned something very important that I didn't touch on as well, which is the Pan-African aspect. So one, we're a full Pan-African organization, and two, to have that interaction with state of the African diaspora region. And also on the ground where I said we have a sovereign territory established is not via the state, but via the system of chiefs and kings who actually have access to resources and have access to land. The key is creating that relationship between the entrepreneurs here and being able to forge and facilitate relationships on the continent. Now, that is also an entire system that we are seeking to fully create cohesion between here and there, not by going to leaders who are owned wholesale, but by dealing with those on the ground in respective territories who are chiefs and kings.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Brother Nat's got his hand up, and if the person who asked the last question can reframe it, that'd be helpful. Nat, do you want to come in at this point? I don't know if you're still there. Your hand is up. There we go. Nice one.
Yes, and yes, greetings, Brother Dean. Greetings, sisters and brothers here. Apologies on it. The only reason why I've not got my camera on, I say quickly, is because I work on a Sundays doing deliveries. So I don't want you guys seeing all of the escapades that are going on around Brixton. Although you might like to see the view, but yeah. So anyway, and those, yeah, the tourists, it's a good sign to me. It shows, like I echo what Brother Dean said, it's a sign that we're doing something right. You guys are doing something right, which is constructive, critical analysis, you know, and dissecting how we build, emancipating the mind. So I'm just proud. It's a good sign. We just got to give it no airtime. To Brother Dean, and to everyone here, well, apologies that I missed the presentation. There was a clash of meetings whilst I was doing my deliveries, and yeah, so I missed the presentation, but I did have questions. I just wanted to know, with the growth and the development of ADPAC, Brother Dean, and greetings, Brother Dean, you know, respect to you, my king.
Right,
staying alive. Basically, today we had the inauguration of the African Diaspora Development Institute of the that were put in place. On Wednesday last week, we had the
APPG,
parliamentary,
African reparations.
On the 7th of September, we had the AU
and the CARICOM.
The beginning of the year, we had the free trade agreement in Africa. Where do you position yourself in all of
the above? All of the above as they happen. We promote them all as they happen. We reach out to the parties as they happen, and we start to form relationships as they happen. That's what I say. As a Pan-African organization, immediately they are there through all of our media, all of our social media platforms. We will redistribute the materials. We create our own materials to support those initiatives. And it's all about bringing us closer together to create intra-African diaspora trade. So it's beautiful. And the part that you missed, I was actually talking about the APPG for African reparations being a common denominator for the entire African, Caribbean, and mixed origin Africans in the United Kingdom, and that anybody who is on the other side of that wire is now a clear target for the rest of the entire population. And we will hold them accountable with our mouths, with our money, and our influence, because it's universal. So if you are not for that, you are not for us. And if you're going to stand with our adversaries to legitimize their obstructions to our progress, socioeconomic progress, we will target you and we will light you up to completely separate you from our community, where you could not open any door to come back.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. And just to learn quickly, so with that said, of the particularly, and to any sisters and brothers, I implore you to do take a look, if you're thinking about the nation building and kind of freedom fighting aspects of Pan-Africanism. Well, I guess that's what it's made up of. But to look at the APPG, the All Party Parliamentary Group, to look at ABBI, which was brought back by Dr. Arikana. Even I'm regularly with Global African Congress to really have a look, because it starts to show you the mappings out.
PHC as well, right here again. Allies, key allies.
The part of the APPG is that Sister Jendai and Sister Esther have been imploring for a while now for counties, local areas, wards to sort out your community to be able to be ready to decide what reparative justice looks like.
Absolutely. Public consultation, though, that's what it's about.
Exactly. So,
but where it starts is from the lead at the front being able to say, this is what reparatory justice actually is. Here are the 5 key elements, because many of us don't know the 5 pillars. So in education from the front then becomes an education that's reciprocal, because we can respond to actually an initiative to say, now we fully understand economic, spiritual, the restitution, we understand all of it, and now we are informed about how we can back it.
Okay, good. And just to learn, the ADPAC's approach with that specific activity, or is that something you're just standing in solidarity with?
No, it's something that we've already reached out. We want to get fully informed with the APPG. In fact, we were talking about forming specific African Caribbean interest APPGs from the summer. So it's something that we've been fully behind. Now, ADPAC's role is to add value, whether that is by creating public consultations like I've been speaking about, highlighting on the platform when we start the monthly meetings to actually invite down to give that presentation to say, these are the 5 pillars of reparations. This is the kind of support that we would appreciate. And that information is going to be distributed on a daily basis, because slow exposure leads to wider adoption. There's no masterclass where we're going to get us all together. It's slow exposure and hitting that subconscious mind with messaging, short burst messaging on a daily basis consistently leads to much wider adoption. So we will play our part to add value in everywhere there is a deficit, where we have those skill sets within our tribe.
Thank you, Brother Dean. Well, payday tomorrow, so I'm sorting out my membership with ADPAC. So I need to do that whether it's as a single member or my organizations.
As an individual, it's as an individual, because us coming and taking part doesn't mean that we don't have institutional knowledge. We don't want individuals to pay institutional money, because to come down and convey institutional knowledge is an individual's component. But as institutions, they could bring like 8-10 people to a meeting, because then we are now building a relationship between an institution and an institution, which makes us vastly more powerful when we go and hit local authority or central government.
Dean, can you explain a bit more about how that think tank type mentality works as well, where you're saying that you're going to create, the way I heard it was like a think tank. I may have misheard it, so just can you clarify that a bit more?
To be fair, that's how we started out. But in terms, the point of having a physical base is less about the town halls where we have general conversations, and then it becomes more focused about the board meetings around particular sectors. So there are individuals that I've spoken to around policy forming. In fact, Brian Channer with the Black Policy Institute. We had a conversation and we're meeting on Tuesday to talk about the training within that and then amalgamating our work. So delivery partners jump in so that we are passing this on intergenerationally in training around policy creation, understanding policy, but then we don't have to do certain things because they've already created on the other side of the pond in the States delivery partners where they already have that relationship of African Americans forming policy, and then here. So in all ways, in all areas, is to come around the table. So let's say it were for...
And am I the only one that's got a pause screen, or has everyone gone the same way? This might happen regularly tonight because it's Saturday. No, it's not even Saturday. It's Sunday streamers, isn't it, that are doing the work on Netflix. So we'll hope he comes back, because I definitely wanted to ask him who he thinks, or in his opinion, of the most authentic Black voice on the airwaves is. I know we normally get the usual Trevor Phillips, John Barnes, and others coming through, but it might be something that we ask other people in the room who they think the most authentic Black voice is that speaks on our behalf until Dean comes back. Okay. I gave you two options there, which were Trevor Phillips and John Barnes, which aren't the best examples, but exactly, yeah, not those two. Anyone except those two. But Dean's face came up there, so yeah, I'm presuming he's signing back in. Have you got an opinion there? Gosh, go ahead.
I'm hoping not. Oh, no, I see Sister Liz's hand up. Just quickly to say, you see, Black, if you want to call it, or African, is so multifaceted. And the more that I've dived into learning our history, I was listening to David Simon of Simon Education, who does online education for just giving a donation, whether it's £1. And he broke down the origin of how we were Pan-African before we even left Africa. The Bantu people, moved down to the southern regions of Africa. So we're so mixed within our own nation of the motherland. You know, you can't have one voice speaking for Africans.
This is the problem.
And Trevor McDonald and John Barnes, with the greatest respect, and I see the Liverpool, and I'm thankful that you smashed my 5-0. But John Barnes and Trevor McDonald, right?
Yeah.
They're, in my humble opinion, all right, they are British, they are English before they're African. All right. Well, emancipation of the mind is something which is very, it can be sophisticated, but it's very simple. Learn your history, and it starts to emancipate. But I don't think John Barnes, because he does things which someone of a conscious mind would think, what are you doing, my brother?
Well, the reason I asked it, and I'll ask Dean the question now as well, thanks, Nat, it's just that if we're organised, if you look at the way the Jewish community does it, the way the Muslim community does it, they've got organisations that will advocate on their behalf, strong and loud, without, there's no shame in it. If they have to go on the news channels, if they have to talk to the newspapers, they will do that. For us, it's usually trauma related, where we've got somebody advocating on our behalf. It's after an event, it's after Grenfell, it's after a murder, it's after knife crime. It's never about getting what we're entitled to. It's never doing that work for us. And an organisation needs to be able to do that if it's going to be effective and respected by the Black community. So, Dean, I was just asking that question, where is the most authentic Black voice that speaks on our behalf, and is there such a thing? And would ADPAC be able to do some of that work? Oh, right. Cool. Right. So what I'd say then is Dean's having some technical trouble. So I'm
going to bring our next event in, Mark.
Yeah, I think so. Dean, is it repairable, or is it completely? Yeah, it looks like. Yeah. What we'll do then, Dean, is, if with your permission, we'll invite you to come back at a later date without the what we're going to call them, the uninvited gate crashers, in a couple of weeks' time, or a couple of, if that's available, and we'll do this again. We'll have more focused targets where we're actually speaking about topics that we've covered tonight. 'Cause I've made a few notes. But yeah, if that's with your permission, Dean, we'll invite you back.
I'm back.
I'm
back.
Right, okay.
You know, my laptop died and I've just run and plugged the phone in, but there was no sound on it. And then your poll for your feedback kept jumping up. So I filled it in. You wouldn't let me on the Zoom.
Right.
I don't want to hold up too much more of you guys' time. I just wanted everybody to get their points across and get all of the questions so that we could convey as much clarity as possible about, one, what APAC is, and about how we can build and start to create cohesion across the work level.